Hi, welcome to the Green Mountain Club show. Today we're going to be talking about mud season. The Green Mountain Club is the founder and maintainer of the Long Trail. We also maintain the Appalachian Trail and the Northeast Kingdom Trails. All in all, we manage 500 miles of trails in Vermont and 25,000 acres that we've conserved over the years. As I said, today we're going to be talking about mud season, as it is mud season here in Vermont, everyone's favorite season. And I'm joined by Catherine Wrigley, our field supervisor. Catherine, thanks for joining us.
Definitely.
And back again, my co-star, Dave Hardy. Dave, welcome.
Thank you.
So, mud season. I guess, Dave, do you want to give kind of a basic of what we're talking about in mud season regarding the trails?
Sure. Mud season is that time of year when it's lovely down in the valleys and you want to go hiking, but the top of the mountain still has snow on it and the snow is melting and the plants haven't yet started taking moisture out of the soil, so the soil gets saturated, and we really do encourage people not to hike in those wet soils. So we ask people to hike in lower elevation, and the state actually closes trails on state land until Memorial Day weekend.
And last year, I think we actually closed the trails in mid-March, and this year was mid-April. Can you think of why that changes sometimes, or what kind of the trigger is for the start of mud season?
Well, a lot of it has to do by when winter ends. It's basically, this was a cooler, longer winter than last season. We had a storm practically right at the very end of calendar winter, late March, and that snow and the weather after that stayed cooler, so it really felt like winter hung in there a little longer. And last year we had a very early spring, and so the start of mud season definitely varies, and the end of mud season to some degree varies. But this winter seems to be tracking more like a normal winter, and normal spring. So likely Memorial Day weekend, you could still see some snow and ice up in the higher elevations on the Long Trail.
And I mean, we all know that everybody obeys mud season, and actually nobody's going to be hiking this weekend, even though it's like mid-70s, sunny.
Exactly.
Because that's just the way it is. Hypothetically, though, Catherine, if somebody were to hike this weekend, what tips would you give to them to minimize the impacts on the trail?
Well, as always, you should bring all the appropriate gear that you'll need for a day hike. And you should always walk through mud, because one of the problems about mud in general on the trail, whether or not it's mud season, is if you don't walk through mud and you walk around it, you then end up widening the trail, which not only impacts the resource by stepping on roots and crushing vegetation, but it also creates sort of a herd path, which can impact other users' sort of experience of wilderness. So definitely just stay in the mud, and if you feel maybe like you've gotten to a place that's particularly muddy, or you've hit rotten snow, because at this point there's still snow on some of the trails up at high elevation, and it's this sort of rotten snow that you might be able to walk for a little while on it and then punch through. So you might just choose to turn around, and that's okay as well.
And you, one of your tasks with the club was kind of the direct supervisor for a lot of the Long Trail Patrol trail crew. Yeah, yeah, LTP. Have you seen sort of in the projects you're working on the kind of impacts of trail widening or erosion? That does that come up sort of in the actual tasks that the crew is working on, or sections?
Well, Dave can probably also speak to this as well, but great examples are just sort of probably if you hike a lot are Monroe Trail on Camel's Hump, or Stowe Pinnacle, just trails that are used a lot, and they're just a little bit wider than normal trails. And our Long Trail Patrol doesn't necessarily always work directly on those projects, but sometimes they do by fixing staircases and stuff, because a lot of times people will start walking around a staircase, so we'll rebuild one to sort of keep everyone back in the trail corridor versus walking out around a staircase. So things like that. And I don't know if Dave has anything else to add or.
Yeah, I mean, some trails are naturally wider. A lot of hiking trails, even in Vermont, were old wood roads once, but mud season definitely has an impact in terms of widening some hiking trails, particularly at higher elevations where the trails were never wide to begin with, and people are trying to keep their boots dry. And as once I heard it told, people try to keep these shiny hiking boots clean, even though they're out there hiking in the woods. But it's good boot care, whatever you want to call it. But and the Long Trail is notorious for not being a particularly dry walk through the wilderness anyway. But this time of year, we definitely encourage people to stay on lower elevation trails, hike on southern exposures where the trail dries out sooner, or just choose places that are hardened, like old country roads or bike paths or roads up mountains like Mount Philo over in Chittenden County.
Why does the south facing matter?
Just there, it's exposed to the sunlight much more than, say, north-facing slopes. So north-facing slopes will hold snow later into the spring, and I've even seen snow on trails in June in Vermont. But the southern slopes get that sunlight and melt out sooner and dry out faster. You'll also get much better wildflowers on that side of the hill because of the longer growing season.
One thing, we talked about the state closing their trails, and the Long Trail north of about Mount Ellen is mostly state land or GMC land, and south of that is mostly U.S. Forest Service land. And the Forest Service, rather than closing, has sort of a tiered, they discourage people from hiking during mud season, and as we go through mud season, they don't discourage low elevation, in that kind of change, that elevation changes. Like I think every 2 weeks it goes up 500 feet. I don't know if you've seen that chart they have. It's a very nuanced message, but it seems to me in some ways, while that maybe isn't very clear to people, there's a point to that it gets drier higher as we go through mud season. Is that true? Is there sort of a logic to, at late May, 2,000 feet is maybe more hikeable than in mid-April?
Oh yeah, it's basically, if I go up Camel's Hump, the place I'm going to see snow and ice on Memorial Day weekend is on the very north side of the very top of the mountain. So yes, the trails do dry out, the snow melts, and as you go deeper into the season, that snow melting line or soil drying out line climbs up the mountain as well. I like to just think in terms of large clumps of time rather than every 2 weeks things move 500 feet. And to me right now it's mud season. It's also trail maintenance season because we're out there clearing the blowdowns and looking at trail and looking at projects. So we are getting out and looking at things, but we are still trying to stay away from high elevations, if for no other reason than we're dealing with the rotten snow conditions that Catherine was just talking about, because we are beginning to tee up projects at higher elevations and running into snow issues at 3,000 feet up on Stark Mountain. Mm-hmm. But we'll be out at 2,000 feet this weekend doing the basic walkthroughs with volunteers and just getting the trail ready for hiking season, so that when Memorial Day comes and mud season's officially over and we're full on into black fly season, which might be the next telecast, we'll be ready for hikers.
You had mentioned earlier the impacts mud season and hiking have on erosion or increased erosion. What would be like a sign of erosion on the trail? I mean, just wiped away, or
that would be a severe form of soil erosion. If you've got walls of soil on both sides and you're walking in a trench on bedrock. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of spots on the south side of Mount Mansfield going up the Butler Lodge that
seen
look
that
like
on Mount
that.
Hunger some.
Yep, there are a few places like that, but Vermont's blessed with a little more soil so that you're not seeing it quite as often as you might see in the Adirondacks or the White Mountains. But that's definitely a function of water, foot traffic, and loose soil. And mud season, paying attention to mud season and hiking in appropriate places like lower elevations is actively practicing conservation. And nobody's out there chasing you if you're hiking during mud season, but it's just strongly encouraged to practice good conservation. And those trails will dry out and you'll get to hike on them soon.
Right. Good. So, you know, we were out at a low elevation hike today, and I think a lot of people are going to be feeling like they want to get outside right now. It's beautiful out. And I guess it's interesting how there's kind of that juxtaposition. Right as it gets really nice, we get to be the ones saying, please don't go outside. Do you guys hear that from friends and GMC members and stuff? Kind of this feeling like everybody wants to get outside?
Sure, and it always feels funny if you're managing a trail and working for a hiking club to tell people don't go hiking.
Yeah.
You know, we're not saying don't go hiking. We're saying hike in the appropriate places, but it's a great place to go hiking. Vermont is, so we don't tell people don't go hiking.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and maybe like adjust your expectations in mud season. Like this isn't peak bagging season. Like don't be like, in May I'm gonna hike Mansfield, Camel's Hump, and Mount Ellen, because like that's not a good time. Maybe save that for August. And like Dave was saying, this could be a time where you just sort of think of hiking as a great stroll in the woods at low elevation where you're practicing your wildflower identification or, I don't know, trying to see if you can see an animal or just get out for exercise. Like, just sort of make it a different experience and not necessarily like to see a view, I guess.
Yeah, and there's two other aspects to this time of year. One is that in places that have dried out, like down in the valleys, and particularly this week now where we've had about 10 days without any real rain, we've got a little higher fire hazard. And the other thing that's going on is with the snowmelt, even without the rain, some of the streams are more swollen than they would be midsummer. So there are a few stream crossings that might be a little interesting right now. And I've taken a couple of phone calls from people that want to go hiking on the Appalachian Trail between Main Junction and the Connecticut River. And a couple of those streams lost their bridges from Tropical Storm Irene, and they haven't been replaced yet. So I'm recommending that they maybe change their itinerary a little bit so that they don't have to make a long detour around a washed out bridge. So those are two other things that go hand in hand with mud season. Is, you know, the streams are swollen from snowmelt and there is a heightened fire hazard. So you just want to be a little more careful when you play with matches.
We don't have a lot of fords here on our trails, but they do come up sometimes, especially when they're swollen rivers. Do you have any tips on safely crossing, or how to determine if it is safe to cross a stream or a brook that you come across?
That's a good question. I'm a little larger than some people, so streams aren't quite as challenging for me as they might be for others, but I generally, if I've got a strong current and it's above my knee, I might think twice about trying to cross. And if I do cross, I face upstream so that I'm pushing against the current as I'm trying to sidestep across a brook. And I think that when you're trying to ford, the other thing you want to do is accept that you're going to get wet and try to keep your feet in the brook so that you're not trying to jump from rock to rock, because that's where you could get in trouble if you slip and fall and hit your head. You're better to keep your feet close to the ground and work your way through a stream than try to hop across one. Now, most stream crossings on trails are rock hops, no big deal. But if you've got a big stream and you've got a ford, accept getting wet, face upstream, and sidestep your way across it and keep your feet close to the ground so that you're not running the risk of slipping and falling and hitting your head.
And I would also add, I haven't hiked across a big stream like this in New England, but you should unbuckle your backpack if you have a big backpack on.
Yep.
Why is that?
Well, backpacking out west, it's so that you can get out of your backpack easily, and if you get caught in the current, like you won't, or you can't get hung up on stuff. Because if you fall in and your backpack is on, and you like go down the river and get caught on something, it can create a hazard.
Yeah, I'm not much of a swimmer, but I'm pretty certain that with a backpack on, I'm even less of a swimmer.
Do you guys know historically if the club or trail organizations have always kind of professed the mud season, this mantra, or is this sort of a newish thing, or anything about the history of how this came about?
I think Green Mountain Club has been working hand in hand with the state for years about mud season, so it's kind of ingrained into the thought process of hiking in Vermont if you live here. It's not for everybody. Some people don't like being told when they can go hiking, and I certainly don't want to get out there in front of them and say no. But I think that Forest Parks and Recreation and Green Mountain Club have been working very closely together about publicizing mud season and encouraging people to seek drier, lower elevation ground during mud season to protect the Green Mountains. And I think that that's an ethic that seems to be spreading a little bit, but it does seem to still be fairly unique to Vermont in my experience.
Do you have any idea of it? I mean, that whether that was going on 60 years ago, 70 years ago, or just curious if you have any idea if it was a message that got out at all back then?
I don't know that.
Yeah.
I suspect it's something that's more like in the last 30 years or so, maybe 40 years with the beginning of Earth Day in the early 70s.
One thing you had kind of raised was, not that we don't play cop on this, that we don't. We have a lot of volunteers who care a lot about the trails. Do you have thoughts on how, or even if people should engage if they see people going on trails, or any thoughts on appropriate interactions of that sort?
My sense is that to approach somebody that you don't know that's hiking on the trail during mud season just comes across a little too cop-like.
Yeah.
And it's better something that you engage a conversation with somebody before they go hiking and before they even show up at the trailhead. Like when you're talking to friends about hiking, you can somehow awkwardly work into the conversation that, this might not be the time of year to go up Mount Mansfield. This might be a really good time to go explore the Stowe Bike Path, or the toll road up Mount Equinox, or find a nice low elevation place that you might not normally go hiking when you're trying to get your mountain climb for the weekend. That this is the time of year to maybe focus on something else like birds or flowers, or foraging for wild edibles. We found some onions today. We definitely saw fiddleheads.
A lot of fiddleheads.
Spring is a cool time of year to go hiking, and it's very colorful and different from summer or fall hiking.
Yeah.
And it's a good time of year to maybe check out something different and save up that long trail hike for Memorial Day weekend or something.
One thing I've been thinking about a lot is we get a lot of calls and people wanting to hike this time of year, and there's sometimes questions about whether it's actually how closed is it, sort of thing, and for the state and for anything that's on the Green Mountain Club, it's closed, but we're not, as you said, we're not policing it. And what I try to think about also is that it's not. it's not that we really need to like that. It'd be great if nobody hiked. That would probably be really good. That'd be really good for the trail. But the reality is, people are going to hike. But anything we can do to minimize it and lessen it, that reduces the wear and tear on the trail and the work we're going to have to do later and the longevity of the trail. So I tend to try to get away from the feeling of absolute and being like, well, people are hiking anyways. I might as well go hiking. Anytime you don't go hiking, that saves some of the wear and tear on the trail during this time period, and then join a section and get out on a hike in June.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really good time of year to join a maintenance trip, and
Right.
Most of them focus on, lower elevations during this time of year, and they save their high elevation walkthroughs for Memorial Day or National Trails Day in early June, when things have dried out a little more.
And by maintenance trip, do you mean like connecting with a Green Mountain Club section mostly, or?
Yeah, mostly section work trips, because they tend to focus on pretty much the month of May to get the trail ready for Memorial Day weekend, and it's a good way to meet some new people that know a lot about their trails and learn about maintenance and give back a little bit.
Do you guys have any personal favorite low elevation, hard surface hikes, mud season hikes, walks that you do?
I guess I was gonna steal Dave, so I won't say it. I'll let Dave go first, and then I'll think of something. I was yeah, Southern Vermont has a lot of nice.
Yeah, this time of year I focus on Southern Vermont or the Appalachian Trail between Main Junction. I really like the stretch of Appalachian Trail outside of Norwich, by Happy Hill Shelter and
That's nice.
some vernal pools, and there just happens to be a brew pub nearby. I don't know how that worked out, but and then I save places like Pico and Killington and Sherburne Pass for a little later in the spring, and usually I'm down there by Memorial Day.
I did like out of West Hartford south on the AT last year, and that was really nice. It goes up into a meadow, and it's just really pretty there, and it's really, I don't know what the elevation is there, but it's pretty low. It was dry. It was really dry, and that was around early May, I think, last year.
Yeah, that piece of trail it's a lot of old wood roads and stone walls and tiny little graveyards in the woods, and it's a really nice stretch of trail to hike.
So did Dave steal yours?
Yeah, well, he didn't. I mean, I stole Dave's. That's why I wanted him to say it. I was thinking too, just for the Chittenden County area, there's always like Mount Philo. There's a road up it that's pretty accessible, and you get nice views. And then it might be a time to check out your town forest.
Yeah.
I feel like most towns have town forests, and they're kind of these secret little spots that sometimes have trails, and so yeah, that's another like place that isn't necessarily run by the Green Mountain Club, but
Yeah.
can be fun to explore.
Yeah, like one of my personal favorites is Kirchner Woods in Stowe, just because that's like my family's old farm, and I think that's really cool. And
Yeah.
the Stowe Land Trust has a lot of neat paths in woods, like Wiesner Woods, and around here the Causeway, I think, is such a
Yeah, it's
unique,
really nice.
interesting place. You're going for a walk out into the middle of one of the sixth biggest body of water or fresh water in America or something.
I think it's something like that.
Yeah, it's big.
But May is also a very funny time of year, because you can have a day like today where it's 70, 75 degrees and sunny, and there's no shade, and that can get pretty warm pretty fast. But there's also days where the cold fronts rolled through, and you can find yourself hiking into Stratton Pond, and it's about 35 degrees and windy. It runs the gamut, and also when it rains this time of year, it's pretty chilly. So you do need to be prepared for a variety of weather conditions, and you do want to pay attention to your weather forecast so that you prepare properly for the trip you've got planned. It's not quite like hiking in July or August, where you can pretty much count on a summer day. May you could get summer, or you could get late March.
So officially the trail will reopen Memorial Day weekend, What kind of determines that? You talked a little bit about trees coming out, leaves coming out, and what's the difference? I mean, is it just warmer?
Well,
time?
It's definitely warmer. There's definitely more sunlight, but it's primarily the trees are fully leafed out and they've begun to pull moisture out of the soil so that the soil is not as saturated. Because otherwise, there's little difference between wet soil in, say, May 2nd, like today, versus a really rainy day in July.
Yeah.
But that really rainy day in July, the trees are constantly pumping water out of the soil, taking it up and respirating it into the air, into the atmosphere through the leaves. And this time of year, that is not happening. And Memorial Day weekend traditionally is seen as the time of year when the trees are fully functioning again and providing that water pump that helps the soil stay dry and allows other plants to grow in the understory of the forest, and ergo drier trails.
I was just wondering, well, did you have I was going to ask
Go for it.
if there's a list. So Dave and I said some sweet spots to hike, but is there just a list if I wanted to look at a list of like 5 hikes where I could go hiking this weekend?
Yeah, we happen to have a list on
Really?
the Green Mountain Club website.
Oh my goodness.
greenmountainclub.org.
That sounds so
Amazing.
convenient.
Wow. Yes, of northern hikes and southern hikes and central hikes.
All
And
right.
Northeast Kingdom hikes just added by our illustrious president, Gene Haig.
How would I find them on that website?
Click on Mud Season 2013.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And I think like a book like The Walker's Guide, Green Mountain Club Walker's Guide would be a nice kind of low elevation, low impact, but nice walks and hikes. And we sell that at the store and online. So thank you. Thank you for that setup. So sort of, I mean, in some, it seems like the seasonal difference between June and May is sort of right now in May. There's still snow. I think you were stepping in snow 2 days ago. And a lot of it.
I was doing something.
But you were working. You were checking out something for work, and that's draining. And then simultaneously, it's also not being pumped out of the soil by the trees. And later on, it's warmer. The snow is all gone, and the trees are doing their work. And then by hiking then instead of now, there's less erosion. That's sort of a basic summary of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, less chance of erosion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
And the widening of the trail, as you mentioned.
Yep.
So, well, anybody else? You have anything else you want to add about mud season?
Nope, just go take a hike.
Yeah.
Just go take a hike.
A lower elevation.
A low
hike.
elevation hike.
Elevation.
Somebody missed the message. Well, thank you guys. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dave, for joining.
Thank you.
Catherine, thanks for joining. I appreciate it. And thank you all for tuning in to another edition of the Green Mountain Club show. You can
back
visit
for
us
Black
at
Friday season.
4711 Waterbury Stowe Road in Waterbury Center, or online at greenmountainclub.org, on Facebook or Twitter. And normally I'd say go take a hike, but take a low elevation hike, as Dave said, and we'll see you on the trails in June. Thank you very much.